I would probably say that I'm best known for my failures. The way I view those failures is, and this is what I teach my son, and this is what I oftentimes talk about, it's the hard work, the resilience, the reaching out to other people. It's the ability to pick yourself back up once you've failed. I actually have a scorecard of failure. It's so prominent. I talk about the idea that I've had 5 career restarts, and that's just sort of a euphemism for the idea that it's not some recruiter called me up and said, "Hey, I've got a new function or a new industry that you should go check out." I got fired. I got fired from my job or canned because I wasn't very successful or I did something that, just wasn't good. And so I've got canned 5 times. This is the hardest number in my little scorecard is the number 6. That's the number of times I've actually sit across with people that I got to know very well, that we shared a common vision and mission and say, look, I'm not sure we have payroll next month. And then a couple months after that, sometimes I have the conversation, guess what? I have to do a layoff here. And I've had over almost 30 major product failures or brand failures in my life. That's quite a lot. And the last number I always use is this number 300. And people, tell people to guess what it is. They say, it looks like a really high number, but it's actually a really low number. And that's my credit score. I've achieved that twice in my life. 300 is as low as you can go. You can't go below 300. It is the basement. And so, yes, I've done a lot of, learned a lot from failures.
Yeah. And it goes back to that, what you talked about is how quickly do you bounce back? I always talk about a concept called BBF, bounce back fast. And what is your bounce back factor to how quickly you can bounce back? Because if you're not failing, that means you're not trying, right? And you're not, trying to get better. So you most recently, you served as Global VP of Innovation at VF Corporation, which is the parent organization to over 30 global apparel companies, including North Face, Vans, Timberland, etc. So tell us a little bit about that and how you being the Global VP of Innovation has really helped you grow and what your role is doing that.
I think what was interesting coming to an organization like VF was it had 30 different brands. And what I realized is that there were 30 different silos. These brands didn't really talk to each other. And part of what I realized in this idea of innovation is if you have a great idea and it works in one brand, think about the value of scaling across all 30 brands. But I think one of the key learnings I had was how do I sell an idea that from day one going to be opposed because either another brand did it and they don't like that brand, they're jealous of that brand, or they find that brand competitive, or it's coming from corporate. To really learn how to take my ideas and systematically make it other people's. Taking an idea that I had and actually making it Gary's idea. And a lot of times I'd talk to Gary, I'd just sit there and I'd listen to everything Gary said. And especially if Gary didn't like the idea, I'd take all these fastidious notes. And then a couple things I do. If you really hated the idea, oftentimes, if I was presenting it back to a larger group and you were in there, I would say, I originally had this great idea and I was going down this path and I met with Gary and he pointed out 3 fatal flaws. And thank God Gary did that because we would have wasted a ton of money. And Gary, humbly submit the idea that I made a pivot because of your advice. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, now it's Gary's pivot, Gary's idea, right? Or you said something so salient and insightful, I would actually put your quote up on a PowerPoint and say, this is what Gary said. This is words of advice heed from Gary. And if it was even super brilliant, sometimes I'd say, this is the Gary principle. And I name a whole principle after you, Gary, right?
Yeah, so, you're moving up in this world, right?
What I actually did is oftentimes I present to the CEO and his 12 direct reports. I knew who I was presenting to, and it was going to be coming up in 3 months. I'd make sure I meet with all 12 of those people. And in that meeting, whatever the idea I was presenting, I'd make sure I'd mention at least everyone's name at least twice in that meeting, giving them credit for an insight, a pivot. And so by the end of the presentation, it's quiet because all of a sudden everyone realized they had co-created this idea together.
I love it. Love that concept.